and welcome to another episode of the Cooperative Political Podcast. I'm your host, Jackson. Joining me, as always, is Nate.
Hey.
And today, we have a fun topic to talk about, and
What?
that is influence over countries. And what I mean by that is, kind of using your power or using your military, using your navy, etc., to kind of one-up and influence another country to get what you want, whether it's trade, whether it's territory, and separate kind of things like that. So that's going to be the main topic for today. I'm going to kind of run right into it here. And as most of you know, there's been a lot recently. We're recording this on December 2nd of 2018, and might be a little bit early, but whatever. And as you know, recently, the Ukraine and Russia have been battling out through territorial disputes. Russia has claimed Crimea and annexed it, and there's been a lot of other territorial disputes. Now, recently, I believe it was 3 Ukraine ships were seized by the Russian government after they accused them of violating their territorial rights. Cargo ship blocked the ships from leaving the Kerch Strait. Sorry if I'm getting that wrong. Russian Coast Guard ships actually fired upon Ukraine ships, wounding 3 to 6, and the tugboat escorting them was actually rammed properly. The Russian government... Yeah, I know a little bit. Yeah,
Blow the
Russian
tugboat
government...
up, everybody. Get rid of it. Slam
get
the
rid of it.
tugboat with a 650-ton ship made out of steel with huge naval cannons. Gotta smash the tugboat.
Exactly. The Russian ships were then captured. The Ukraine ships were then captured by the Russian Coast Guard.
I think you pronounce it the Kerch, like you'd pronounce merch.
Yeah, Kerch Strait or something, Kerch Strait, whatever. Yeah, and pretty much things have escalated from there. The Ukraine government then imposed martial law for 30 days in the surrounding areas around the Russian border. Russia, kind of using this newfound momentum, blew up their territorial sea rights, kind of giving them more access to different seas and ports that would end up, taking over Ukraine ports, which is pretty scary. So that would mean, any Ukraine ship going to a Ukraine port would have to pass through Russian maritime territory, which is never a good thing, ever. Basically, the width... Yeah, we already know. Yeah, they already have Crimea, which is bad, but they're trying to take over a little bit more. It's basically gone from bad to worse from there, as the U.S. government does not condone any of it, including both sides of the conflict. It yet to take a side, but did cancel a meeting with Vladimir Putin, the chairman of Russia or whatever, at the G20 summit. So that's pretty brutal. Other than that, a couple of things have gone on. The Russians released a video of Ukrainian sailors confessing, saying that they confessed to violating the territorial rights. I've listened to them, and let me tell you, it doesn't sound exactly true. Probably faked, even. And Putin's accused Ukraine's president Petro Poroshenko of orchestrating the provocation itself. In following, yeah, I know, I got that one right. In following, the Ukraine did bar the Russian men aged 16 to 60 from entering Ukraine. That's all we have right now on it, but it's been pretty brutal. Hopefully, when you guys are hearing this, some more has happened. But it's been pretty brutal out there.
We'll definitely get updates on it, and we'll definitely probably provide stuff on our Instagram if necessary.
Yeah, I recommend you follow us on Instagram.
Yeah.
But yeah, anything you want to add?
Yeah, it's definitely been a catastrophe. I mean, the Ukrainian thing is kind of overblown. I mean, yes, the Russians did ram a tugboat, which is definitely bad, and they captured and wounded a bunch of people on Ukraine's territory.
3 to 6. 3 to 6.
They don't own that territory, so I don't know what they're talking about. The point is, why are they... I understand maybe, getting very angry about this, but they're banning all Russian men aged 16 to 60, which is like pulling a Trump. You shouldn't pull a Trump.
Well, when you think about it, this isn't like the first event that's happened. I mean, they annexed one of their most populated cities, and they're one of their swabs of territory, Crimea, that peninsula, and that's got Sevastopol, and it's truly like this is just adding salt to the wound. So far, right? There's only been small skirmishes and small border conflicts, but this was true. Like this was the first time when officially Russian Navy, Russian Coast Guard, whatever, Russian military shot and wounded Ukrainian soldiers, right? Like that, without a third party, without some kind of proxy militia. That was the first time that they had really, it was Russia on Ukraine.
I'm surprised
And
this hasn't
so
started World War III.
exactly, and that's what it comes down to. And that's what I'm miffed that the U.S. is the only one who's officially said anything. Yeah, the EU has pretty much turned their noses at this because, I mean, for various amount of reasons, obviously Russia is a huge trade supplier with the EU.
Oil provider.
Yeah, providing, I think it's something ridiculous, and a ridiculous amount of natural gas,
Yeah,
and
they
pretty
provide
much
30% of
EU's.
their oil to like
Thank you.
the European Union.
Yeah, to the European Union. So it'd be a huge blow. And I mean, when we look way back and when this whole thing started, the reason why was because the Ukraine wanted to stop being kind of affiliated with Russia and wanted to join the EU.
The weird thing
And
is, I don't understand the like territorial like dogfight that's going on here because so if Russia for some stupid reason decides, yeah, we need Ukraine now, so they're gonna take it. Ukraine Ukraine is provided like 90% of its power from other countries. It has very little natural resources, very little oil. You're literally just carrying around a limping horse. I mean, I don't know what you try to use this for. Sure, it's a position in the Baltic Sea, but like, so how much is that going to help you? You got like
yeah,
a
I
tiny
see what
sphere
you're
of
saying.
influence for your planes. Congratulations.
Sure, but I think it's more of the fact that I mean Ukraine fought hard for their independence, right? They fought hard, and there was a lot of different partisan guerrilla warfare that had to go into that, and a lot of people died for Ukraine to become independent. It wasn't just like that. A lot of people forget that the downfall of the Soviet Union was very bloody. It wasn't just necessarily involved with the economic collapse. And I think that we need to remember that, and that this for now, Russia to try to be walking over Ukraine again, and to be literally getting up in their grill and taking land and their ships from them, it's kind of crazy.
It's definitely
And
crazy.
I think we need to remember this kind of influence, and this is huge because Russia's been doing this forever, but now it's on EU soil, and it's kind of a brutal thing. And that was kind of that's the whole point of this episode, is kind of to inform you all in the situation with Ukraine, and the fact that, we should be weary of this. A lot of people will see it in the headlines and just quickly overlook it and move on to the next article, when really this could be the start of World War III
So
if we really decide to get involved.
just careful. Anyway, um, the next country to appear on our little political bullying list is the good old USA. And now we're gonna get to USA a lot because they actually have a pretty funny history with other countries. One of which Jackson will get into. But the first one is
Of
Panama.
course.
The country of Panama was never became independent. It didn't have a cool civil war like all the other countries in Central and South America, like Colombia, Brazil, Argentina, stuff like that. No. Panama was literally created by the U.S. So, Teddy Roosevelt was trying to be a big show off, and he thought we need to build a canal, and Panama was, or what is now Panama, which was actually owned by Colombia. So essentially, the entire area was just Colombia. And they asked Colombia turned their noses up at them and said, no, we're not going to do that. And the United States and a French contractor got super angry. So what they did is they funded a military coup in promising that they'd like help them out, and they essentially helped the military coup. They paid them, gave them weapons, and then they stormed them, and then they brought U.S. naval gunboats, like artillery guns and like just a bunch of other
Hmm.
stuff. They just navally blockaded what is now Panama. So the the rebels won almost immediately because there was the U.S. with physical, like the Navy outside, essentially stopping anyone from going anywhere. And so then they took over. They then proceeded to build the Panama Canal, and that is possibly like one of the worst ways to just use your military. Just think, all right, we need to build a glorified hole or a glorified like trench that goes like 20 miles. Let's go take over a government. And they did.
Hmm.
And ironically, the Colombian government kind of just left. They bought all of the land from Panama, what is now Panama. It's not like they took over the Colombian government. They just made their own, and then they just stopped the post-Colombian government from doing anything about it by just by navy. Um, another another big display of political power, which definitely should get addressed. This is more recent, and it's more involved now in current politics. It's China's right to the sea and the huge fiasco that they have undermined. Um, I'm actually doing this in Model UN, so it's great. But
Sweet.
sorry. The thing is so China essentially has the international rule provided by NATO is that 200 miles off the coast of any country counts as their waters. So if you shot someone on a boat 200 miles off the coast, or less than 200 miles off the coast of somewhere, it would proceed to you'd you'd be if you got arrested, you'd get hauled back to that country and then tried by their laws. The point is, uh, China wants there's a huge amount of islands in the South Pacific, and they're innumerable. Like they're in the thousands. And the point is there are so many countries. There's a lot of countries that make up like a group of those islands, or some of them are
Stuff
just a
like
single islands.
places like Vietnam, the Philippines,
Or
Indonesia. Just
Brunei, which is a 30-mile stretch of land that is one of the richest per person countries in the
yeah.
world, and it's
Nope.
got a 200-mile border off its coast. That's not really that doesn't really work because like there's there's like they have a 200-mile stretch of it's a 200 by 30, so it's like a teeny tiny rectangle. But
Mhm.
um, China, however, has a huge coast, and they've been using that to their advantage. They've basically been claiming a ton of islands. They have stated that they're theirs. Anyone who tries to contest with them ends up getting like shown up by the military, and then they promptly leave. Um, they they
They've
also,
even they've even
ironically,
almost built their own
no,
islands
they have built their own islands. They
out of
tired of taking
sand,
others' islands, so they just make their own now, which is
thus
honestly
would
quite funny.
extend their maritime control
Yes,
and would give them more of a precedent. So those islands usually
they're just island
you can
hopping. It's
actually
like what the U.S. did. It's just
yeah
essentially
you
just
you
yeah.
you can actually look at these islands from Google Maps and they'll be the exact size
And
that
they'll
is
be
needed
like
for a
just flat.
airfield or a navy base or something, and they'll just be
They're
completely
stupid. They're
flat.
like made in a day and a half, and they're just like just dumps of sand into the ocean. And um, I don't know about you, but just having a random like naval base is quite funny. Yeah, but as Jackson said, then China will just go, okay, so our border is everywhere to here. There's this teeny tiny island that extends our reach by another 200 miles off coast. So
Mhm.
they're really just taking over the sea. The Philippines is getting kind of worried because China is a huge naval threat, and they rely entirely on the U.S., and the U.S. is kind of ignoring them. We're actually ignoring everyone in the South China Sea, which is not great, but um, if China has their way, they're just going to continue to simply just take territory, make territory, and then just have naval bases all over the South China Sea, which is definitely a good thing for them to push. Finally, and then I'll turn this over to Jackson for the rest. Um, there is the huge problem of yet again China and their new Silk Road. This is a hugely ambitious project that's scheduled to like take about $11 trillion to make, and essentially they're going to make a gigantic um, infrastructure project for all of China, well, at least from China to a bunch of countries next to them, and then a ton of the like Asian countries all the way to like Europe. And the idea is essentially they're going to make all of Asia owe them because they're doing this for free. They're not getting paid for this. They're just doing this out of the kindness of their heart. But they're making a
Apparently.
ton of infrastructure for no reason other than just, okay, we built you a huge thing of infrastructure. We made all of you wealthier. Now you get to do stuff for us. And like it's a political essentially just like an octopus just reaching out and then just kind of taking a hug, giving a hug to all the other countries. There's nothing they can do about it. They just have to. They have to work with that. Um, yeah, China's project is starting to unease people because there's thinking, oh, there's there's a government knocking on our doorstep saying, "Hey, would you like to have infrastructure?" I mean, no one's gonna say no to that, but I mean, these countries are facing, do we want infrastructure or do we want to be independent from China? Because China's just going to come knocking at the door eventually with a debt waiver and essentially just say, "Hey, you owe us for this. You owe us for how much we
Exactly.
built you," and then they're just going to sit there paying that off to China.
Well, we've kind of seen that before, right? And we see it now, currently, as we can. Well, I can kind of do a quick catch up here. And currently, China is trying to gain political influence on the floor of the world, right? Obviously, NATO dominates the world floor. When it comes to just pure amount of countries, you have previous, colonial countries and stuff, and you see that. And obviously, when you pushing for something, it's going to go well. Well, recently that's been changing. China has been gaining a lot of political influence in Africa by doing the exact same thing, right? Doing these free infrastructure projects and basically just saying, "Hey, thanks, but how about you just vote yes on this?" And we see that kind of influence. We see the political influence that China can gain on other countries by doing stuff like that. And we see it all across the world. We've seen it with Russia. We've seen it with the US. We've seen it with Britain. We've seen it with France.
We've definitely
We've
done with
seen
like
it.
Vietnam and Korea. We're like,
Of
"Hey,
course,
South
of
Korea,
course.
we're gonna make you modern now." Actually, we did that with Japan after World War II. We're like, "Hey, Japan, we're gonna fix your economy because it's broken, and now Japan looks like us,
Well,
if
yeah,
not
yeah.
a bit
We were,
weirder."
hey, we'll fix your economy, but you just gotta be democratic, right? And so, and we see influence all over the world, and I think a lot of people are willing to just kind of brush it off for the fact that, hey, we're gaining from this. We're gaining from Japan being democratic. We're getting that vote. We're getting that money. We're getting the shared trade, right? And we never actually, think now with Japan, they're not exactly in a bad place right now. But there are countries that we've royally screwed over. There's countries that Russia has royally screwed over. There's countries that,
Afghanistan.
yeah, Afghanistan and this influence is not necessarily a good thing. And while China is building these infrastructure projects in Africa, yes, it's helping, but in the long run, right? Having something where you can't necessarily vote for yourself, having when eventually after all these infrastructure projects, China will somewhat own you when it comes to the kind of political space on the floor of U.S. On the floor of global politics. It can be a scary idea to these country leaders, to us. The idea of a country being able to use their influence, use their military influence and stuff like that to kind of get what they want can be super scary, super scary. And I think I think we just need to kind of worry about that a little bit more than we are. And that's kind of the main point of this episode. But I kind of want to bring it down a little bit of a light touch, right? To the time when the U.S. overthrew a country because they were impeding on banana sales, right? And this shows how funny, how countries will use their influence, right? And around the 1950s, the early 1950s, banana production in Central America was absolutely booming, right? It's where we were getting most of our bananas. and it was a huge part of our thing, right? It was a lot of our trade. It was a lot of our produce coming into America. And so one of these companies were trading and doing a lot of their production of bananas in Guatemala.
They became a
Right?
monopoly essentially.
Yeah, there were three main monopolies, right? And one of them was doing
Bananas.
almost exclusively all their banana production in Guatemala, right? Now here comes a second country, or a second company, a second banana company, right?
Hmm.
And they make a deal with the Guatemalan government. Hey, we'll give you infrastructure, we'll give you money. You just got to give us this free land. No one's using it. We just are going to use it to grow bananas, right? Guatemalan government, they agreed. Now, this first company, they're miffed, right? That means that they're going to have to leave Guatemala. That means they're going to have to fight for new land, right? They're going to have, they're going to have to make new enclaves of business. And it was going to kind of suck for them. They couldn't do it exclusively with one country. And so, what does this company do? Well, it goes to the U.S. president, of course, as you would. And this company goes to Eisenhower, and they go, Eisenhower, Guatemala is going communist. And what does the U.S. government do? They overthrow the Guatemalan government. All for the sake of bananas, right? And that kind of shows how influence can be sometimes, right? Overthrowing a country, using a military coup, and overthrowing a country's government for the sake of one banana company, right? That shows how we play, these pieces into the puzzle here. That shows how we kind of can do that sometimes, and we are royally screwed over Guatemala, right? They didn't have a free government for years because of this. That company went out of business before that country had recovered, right?
Sure.
And so, yeah, it's kind of irony, right? And so, even though eventually at the end they got their land, right? The new Guatemalan government gave the company the land that they originally wanted, and everything was okay. In the long run, we look at Guatemala now, not exactly a fantastic place to live, right? And I wouldn't personally want to live in Guatemala right now, right? And we see that our influence and our ability, and I'm not saying Guatemala would have been perfect if U.S. didn't overthrow it, but it's not exactly helping them. It's not exactly helping them by letting a monopoly run all their land.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the whole point of this episode, right? It was to bring attention. I just think that us as citizens of the U.S., let's say strongest country in the world, I think we forget to look at a lot of this stuff, and we forget, to remember that, hey, we just saw the Ukraine in the headlines. Yeah, it's a huge deal, and it could start World War III. Border disputes like this are crazy and can last for years, decades, and result in many of people dying or being sent away from their homes, right? Just due to people getting cut off. And I think we just kind of forget that sometimes as Americans. And that's kind of the whole point of the show is, we'll do the research so you don't have to. And we kind of inform you about what's going on so that you can make your own decisions, right? We're not here to enforce political ideology on you.
I mean, that's why one of us is a liberal and one of us is a conservative. It's a balance. We make sure of that. Just so
exactly.
You can't cry foul and think, oh, well, want to use a lib commie bastard, so we can't trust any of you. But the other one's like a conservative that statistically most of you are, so it helps balance out. And we try to keep as unbiased as possible, so you can just make your own decisions without having to worry about the news we give you.
At the end of the day, do your own research. That is what I will always say.
That's literally our motto.
You can look at a totally different article and learn something completely different than what I learned from what I read when reading up on Ukraine and when reading up on Guatemala. It is a huge deal, right? And we're not always going to have all the answers that you need, right? So I encourage you, do your own research. It's the best way to know the news. And we'll see you all soon.
Yeah. You guys have a good one, and enjoy. I think enjoy your Christmas break.
And enjoy holiday season. I
Yeah,
don't know what the
cheer.
schedule is.
It's a play by ear basis.
Yeah, we
But
don't even know when this episode's releasing, so
but
have fun in the
when it
time
does,
period that you are in.
we hope you have a good whatever you celebrate in December. Have a good one.
Goodbye.
That's us.